Tales from the Terran Republic. Tunal shifted nervously, hopping from one foot to the other. The human next to him smiled as she leaned against the hull of the Z vessel. "Relax, Big T. You are going to pop out one of your eyes," Sheila chuckled as she took a deep drag on her vaporizer and exhaled, blowing vapor rings. "A state of relaxation is impossible," Tunal said miserably. "I am unused to criminal endeavor. We aren't equipped for crime, unlike you humans. And yet, here you are." Tunal looked around nervously and checked his sensors. Sheila laughed at him. "Jesus T," she smirked. "We are on a rock in the middle of nowhere. There isn't anyone or anything in the whole system." "Maybe we were followed," Tunal said. Sheila rolled her eyes. "We weren't followed. I checked. It's an empty goddamn system. It's not like we could miss them. They could be cloaked." "T, if a cloaked Federation warship were tailing us, they would have gotten us by now." "They could be waiting for the cellar." "Yep, they could very well be. We are committing a crime after all. Fun, isn't it?" Tunal started gulping air anxiously. "Oh, by the creators, this was a bad idea." "Too late to worry about that now," Sheila chuckled. "Besides, isn't a just cause like yours worth a little risk? If you can't handle this, how the hell can you expect to handle the merchandise once you get it?" The sensor started flashing, and Tunal almost fainted. Sheila pulled out a communicator. "Black Dragon, that you?" "Yep, how's it going, Sheila?" "Pretty good. The Z is about to piss himself again, but other than that, we're golden." "Great. We are sending a dropship now." Sheila turned to Tunal. "See? You worry too much." An angular black ship came into view and Tunal started in alarm. "That's a Raven," Sheila laughed at him. "Yep, good call. That is indeed a Raven-class assault lander. We use a lot of stuff from the Great War. We built so many warships that we haven't really had to build new civilian ones. You will see battleships being used as tankers if you get closer to Sol." "So you just disarmed your warships?" "Disarmed?" Sheila smirked. "T, you are just adorable, you know that?" The Raven landed with the silence for which they were known. The hatch opened, and the biggest human Tunal had ever seen stepped out. Sheila trotted up, and the two humans performed some sort of body squeezing that looked affectionate. The big human looked over at Tunal. "That the buyer?" "Yep. T, this is Johnny." "Johnny, this is T." "It is an honor to meet you, Mr. Johnny," Tunal said. "You got the money?" Tunal was startled by the abruptness, but he reminded himself that he was dealing with humans, and with the criminal element at that. He nodded and produced a small data crystal. Johnny took the crystal, scanned it, and whistled. "It is an honor to meet you too," he replied, and then headed toward the open hatch of the lander, beckoning for them to follow. "I have a wide selection of goods, and I think you will be quite pleased," he said with a smile. Johnny opened a crate. Inside were rows of automatic rifles. He picked one up and tossed it toward Tunal. Tunal grabbed at it, almost letting it fall to the deck. "What you have there is the Terran Classic, the AK-47. These have been in use for over a Tales from the Terran Republic. 1,000 years, and there is a reason. Your physiology is close enough to ours that you should be able to use them with no modification. 30-round magazine, reliable, completely chemically powered, and will tear right through a personal deflector. They won't show up on sensors, at least at first. We also have armor-piercing rounds, specially designed for standard combat armor. Right through the screen, then right through the vest." "Holy, are these relics?" Sheila asked as she caressed one fondly. "You think I would be selling relics to a non-human?" Johnny scoffed. "These are old stock from early Independence War production runs on Terra. That's why they have the wooden stocks. We were running low on polymers there for a couple of years." "Can I have one?" Johnny tossed her an AK, and she squealed in delight. Johnny grinned over at a stunned Tunal and opened another crate. "These are model 1911 45 ACP semi-automatic pistols. The high-mass and low-velocity rounds will cut right through deflector belts. The recoil might be a little heavy for Osh, but you should be able to handle them with practice." Johnny opened case after case of human weaponry, showing off shotguns, rockets, and grenades. All of these goodies are completely chemically powered as requested, and all of them are proven effective against Federation, Imperial, and Collective forces, Johnny said proudly. Tunal gulped anxiously as he looked at the list his leader had given him. He started hiccuping. And about the The hiccups got worse, cutting off his ability to speak. Sheila and Johnny grinned impishly. Oh yes. Johnny went to the back and rolled out a trolley with 6 long black polymer cases marked with bright yellow warnings. He opened one. Here they are, he proudly announced. Type 7 tactical nuclear weapons. They are fission-fusion hybrid explosives. I'm sure you're familiar with these babies from the war. More speechless hiccups. These are just the warheads, mind you, Johnny continued. You'll have to find a way to get them where you want them to go. Boom. Sheila sighed nostalgically as she ran her fingers along one of the cases. She looked up at Tunal with misty eyes. Oh, you will like these. Tunal was about to pass out. The transaction went smoothly, and several more ravens landed. Loaded with arms, Sheila inventoried the goods and checked off the shipments. That was actually Tunal's responsibility, but he needed a little break and was sitting on a crate of AK-47s, breathing heavily into a respirator. Okay, T, you are all set. Everything is bought and paid for. Schematics, tutorials, and the like are on this, she said as she handed him a data crystal. Hey Johnny, can I hitch a ride with you? Sure thing, hop on, Johnny replied. Tunal was confused. You aren't continuing to travel with me? On a ship full of illegal arms, including nuclear weapons, that is heading through Federation space? Are you out of your mind? Later, Tater. Sheila waved as the Raven's hatch closed, leaving a desperately gasping and hiccuping Tunal holding his head in despair. I hate humans, he mumbled between hiccups. Tales from the Terran Republic. Damage control. Ambassador John Wintersmith sipped coffee as he watched his holomonitor. Scenes from the Z Civil War were playing on just about every Federation news channel. Blown-apart troop transports, shredded habitation pods, crashed landing craft, and of course, pixelated dead Federation peacekeepers. It had been playing damn near 24 hours a day for the past few days. He smiled. It was the standard Federation clusterfuck. Now the Z government forces screwing the pooch, he could understand. But the Federation? They should have learned by now. He turned to an uncensored Federation government feed to watch actual combat footage and nodded approvingly. The Z were pretty damn good shots. He had no idea who supplied them, but they had clearly bought the good stuff. They were using frontline hardware, especially those armor-piercing rounds. Those had to be late-generation stock, at least Mark 12 from the looks of the carnage. The feed suddenly shifted to a static-filled picture of a mushroom cloud rising in the distance. John's smile faded. Who the fuck sold them nukes? Political incident coming right up. He pulled out an edible from the desk drawer and consumed it, savoring every morsel. Grandma made the best brownies. Another mushroom cloud popped up. Then another. He picked up the analog telephone on his desk and called his secretary. Good morning, sir. Have you been watching the feeds? His KES secretary lisped with undisguised amusement. Yes, I have. Get me in touch with Terran Intelligence. I've already started the process. John smiled again. Good old Toby. Annoyingly efficient as always. A few minutes later, his phone rang. Hey, John. This is Helen. Helen, hi. The Zeus just used nukes. Is there something you need to tell me? They didn't get them from us, if that is what you're asking. Any ideas? Nothing confirmed. We do know that Sheila Donovan was recently seen in the company of an unknown Z, though. Helen replied. John groaned. Can we just arrest her already? For what? Having lunch? We don't have anything on her. We never have anything on her. You guys are intelligence, right? Can't you just make the problem go away? Since the shooting stopped, we are avoiding extra-legal solutions, especially after that fiasco on Io. The best I can do is list her as wanted for questioning concerning matters of Republic security, Category 1. But she has had that dubious honor for a while. Ambassador, Counselor Keshala is here, wishing to speak to you urgently, Toby said over the intercom. I bet he does. Helen, I gotta do damage control over here. Helen cut off the communication. Toby, let the Honorable Counselor in and make some green tea. Will do, boss. The Honorable Counselor prefers pesca. I'll brew that instead. I do not desire refreshment. I require answers. Kshala screamed loudly as he stormed in, his crests fully engorged and pulsing. John rose and bowed politely. Counselor, to what do I owe the honor of your presence? He said with amused courtesy. The sight of an enraged Pokar was something that always tickled him. Pissing them off was sort of a hobby of his. The edible was starting to kick in, and he had to keep himself from giggling. You know exactly why I'm here. Calm down, counselor. Anger does not facilitate constructive communication. John laughed. Kshala had used that exact same line on him once, and John loved rubbing his face in it every single time he could. Kshala became silent, shaking with rage. Let's try using our grown-up inside voices now. Let's try this again. To what do I owe the honor of your presence? As you are no doubt already aware, Terran combat arms and fusion explosives have been used by Z insurgents in their illegal insurrection. Yeah, the Z-Drons and your peacekeepers are getting their asses handed to them by some miners. I've been watching the feeds. They are pretty good. You admire them? Now. Inside voices, please. John giggled despite his best efforts. A Muppet with inflatable peckers popping out of his head was just too much. To answer the question that is odds-on the reason for gracing me with your most august personage. No, we did not supply the rebels. And no, we do not know who did. To answer the question that is odds-on the reason for gracing me with your most august personage. No, we did not supply the rebels, and no, we do not know who did. The next answer is yes. Yes, we are looking for them, and yes, we are taking this seriously. John gave Kshala a pleasant, lightly stoned smile. This was a fantastic batch of brownies. He made a mental note to call Grandma. Kshala quivered with rage. He hated Terrans with a burning passion. Every time he saw one, he immediately remembered slithering over the dead and clawing his way past the living as he surged toward an escape pod in a blind panic, with Terran Marines right behind him, calmly slaughtering their way through the station. That was horrible. But what truly tightly bound hatred to his heart was the short message burned into the hull of his pod as he made good his escape. Your life has been spared by the Terran Republic. He blinked hard, trying to swallow the hate and rage and remain professional. The war was over, and he had to try to move on. But each and every time he saw a Terran, it all came back. And John was perhaps the worst. Most species chose their most polite, most diplomatic, most deferential individuals to be ambassadors to the Federation. But the Terrans? They sent John. To use a human term, John was an Shala in his studies of the human language, had always struggled with human idioms, slang, and obscenity. But the one phrase he understood, John was an asshole. He wasn't posted as ambassador to encourage peace and mutual understanding, but more as an enduring, go fuck yourself directed at the Federation. Go fuck yourself was a phrase Kshala was also familiar with. It was used by John quite often. What he hated most about John were the medals he wore. All of his decorations, denoting his experience and prowess in battle, pinned right onto his diplomatic uniform. Kshala had taken the time to research each and every one of them and the bloody swath across the galaxy they represented. The one that was the absolute worst was the stylized silver human skull and crossed femurs on a notched black obsidian background. It was the mark given to a Marine raider, with each notch representing 10 kills. Kshala had seen them before. Killing their way across his homeworld, expressionless, encased in their powered exoskeletons. John had a lot of notches. Kshala checked the brainwave scanner implanted in one of his manipulators. As usual, the readings from John were utterly useless. He had no idea if it was some primitive human technology, archaic martial discipline, or just sheer insanity, but John could alter the baseline of his mental state seemingly at will. He could somehow make everything funny to himself, no matter how serious the situation. All Kshala could detect was mild euphoria and hilarity. Do you honestly expect the Federation to believe that you do not know the origin of those fusion bombs? John looked over at Kshala and laughed. Do you have any idea how many nukes we produced? No. How many? It wasn't a rhetorical question. We have absolutely no idea how many we made. We were cranking those babies out as fast as we could. We made them by the millions. John glanced at a data screen. From what we can gather, the ones the Z Freedom Fighters are using are between a Type 5 and a Type 8, he continued. Those were belt-fed into mass accelerators and sprayed by the dozen. You remember, right? You're from where? Zarin 7, isn't it? John smiled, revealing his wide, fang-laden mouth. Kshala lunged forward with a primal hiss, pincers spread as he nearly leaped over John's desk. John rose from his chair, still grinning. Why, Counselor, you surprise me. Where's that stately decorum for which the Federation is known? You're acting almost Terran. he chuckled. Not that I object, of course. Green phlegm started bubbling from Keshala's primary mouth, dripping onto John's desk. Keshala, shuddering with rage, drew himself up to his full height and, without bothering to wipe the phlegm from his face, said, "The Federation is disinclined to believe that the distribution of fusion weaponry to those acting against the Federation is accidental. We view this as an act of war." John snickered. "Okay, sounds good to me." Keshala blinked. "Do you not realize the gravity of my statement?" "Sure do." John picked up his toppled cup, walked to the coffee maker, and poured himself another drink. "Let me explain something to you." He took a long, slow sip. "A lot of Terrans think the war ended way too soon, including myself. A lot of us think we should have kept going, myself included. A lot of us, including myself, view sneak attacks, especially when we were already weakened due to a conflict with the collective, to be a dick move, and we would love, truly and deeply love, watching the entire Federation burn." John advanced toward a bubbling, spluttering Keshala. "So forgive me if I don't throw myself down in front of you, begging the almighty Federation to spare us lowly, backward, primitive humans." He kept advancing, backing Keshala into a corner. "So the way I see it, you have two choices. You can declare war over some surplus from a war you started, coming back to bite you in the ass." He grinned. "Or you can take your threats and fuck off from the Terran Republic. Precious cargo." "Something's wrong. Something is really, really wrong." The young Z paced back and forth nervously. "By the Creator's scalp, you need to calm down," Tunal said as he lounged on a large shipping crate, sipping on a juice box. "She will be here." "She's late." "She's less than an hour late." Tunal shrugged. "We're traveling unimaginably vast distances with the intent of intersecting our paths on this desolate dustball of a planet at this precise moment in the entirety of time. If you think about it in a cosmic sense, the fact that it's possible at all is mind-blowing." "What exactly is in that juice box?" Skal asked dubiously. Tunal just laughed at him. Skal fidgeted uneasily. They had warned him that Tunal was insane. He had thought they were exaggerating. But now, the fact that Tunal was still so calm and personable was proof positive that they had been right. "Skal, I was nervous as the 12 hells the first few times I did this. In fact, I hiccuped and shat myself the whole way." Tunal grinned. "It gets easier." "You pooped your pants?" Skal asked, horrified. "Only a little bit, and that's because I knew exactly how close we were to blowing up. That cloaking device that human friend Johnny provided isn't exactly the most stable. We had a minute left at the most. I envy the humans. They pucker where we squeeze. We had less than a minute left? Shh, passengers." "What? What would you have done if we hadn't cleared the blockade in time?" Tunal shrugged. "I would have uncloaked, surrendered, and spent the rest of my life in a forced labor facility." He sipped his juice box. "I would normally say that I'd uncloak and make a run for it, but not with refugees on board. My ass becoming one with the universe, that I can accept. But I'm not willing to take them along." "You would take me along?" Skal asked in disbelief. "Yep, you signed up for this. Freedom fighter, liberty or death, right? I gotta go." Skal sprinted behind the ship. Tunal laughed and yelled after him, "Stay clear of the viewing ports." The paper tiger eased into orbit. Sheila scanned for terrestrial objects. She couldn't find them at first, but T had picked a good spot. She smiled. T was getting good at this. "Paper tiger to hermit crab, you ready?" "T, ready to go," Tunal replied, then turned to Skal. "See? Everything's cool. Let's start offloading the goodies." They entered their vessel and started transferring pallet after pallet of white powder. "What is all this stuff anyway?" Skal asked. "Methamphetamine." "What's methamphetamine?" "A dangerously addictive street drug that's popular with humans." "We are making slavers' dust?" Skal squealed. Tunal sighed. "Do you want the guns or not?" Skal held his head in his manipulators and hiccuped. This was not what he had envisioned at all. There was no glory. There was no nobility. There was nothing but constant worry and moral ambiguity. Fear. He was prepared for combat. He was prepared for war. What he was not prepared for was suddenly becoming a drug dealer. Sheila landed the paper tiger next to Tal's vessel, kicking up a thick cloud of dust. Tunal held a rag over his breathing orifice as he stepped forward to greet her. Moments later, Sheila and 6 other armed humans debarked and advanced. Scal watched in confusion as Tunal strode up to the lead human and engaged in some odd, overly complicated hand-slapping ritual. Tunal turned and motioned for Scal to approach. Sheila, this is my new friend, SS. This is human friend Sheila. She is a very good friend to us. Sheila smiled, revealing her disturbingly omnivorous teeth. Great to meet you, S. She turned to Tunal. Is he your replacement for when you inevitably become one with the creators, or lose even more of your eyes? Me? That is why the creators blessed us with 12. Tunal chuckled, then gestured at the pallets. It's fortunate we have so much refining equipment sitting idle due to the conflict. He clicked his mandibles. I trust it will meet your standards? Sheila flashed that unsettling, toothy grin again and approached the cargo with a scanner. Damn, you and I should go into business after your war, she said approvingly as she looked over the screen. They may look funny, but those Zeos can churn out crystal meth like nobody's business. Tunal chittered in amusement. That is an interesting prospect. Who would suspect a nervous little Z hauling a shipload of contraband? Sheila barked a laugh. I think you guys have officially dispelled that nervous little Z stereotype. Honestly, I didn't think you'd last a month. Tunal's tone darkened. How is it going, anyhow? All I get is Federation propaganda. Sheila's smile faded, like it's a stalemate. We're neither advancing nor retreating. She sighed. We're just dying. Tunal clacked his mandible softly. Sheila placed a hand on his carpus and nodded. Yep, sounds like war. Just don't get too used to it. A moment later, she shook off the gloom and perked up. On a more cheerful note, we have a nice delivery for you. Everything you asked for, plus some presents for our increasingly valuable friends. She snapped her fingers, and her men started unloading. 10,000 more AKs, all the ammo you requested, and we managed to get our hands on the Mark 15 armor-piercing rounds. You're gonna love these babies. Go through rigid combat armor like a knife through butter. Or whatever soft spread you guys have. Tunal clicked in appreciation. We couldn't get the Mark 7 nukes you guys love so much, she continued, but we did get some Mark 5s, so we threw in another 4 to make up for it. That okay? Tunal's mandibles spread wide in a Zeo approximation of a grin. That's more than okay? Sheila laughed, did a little happy dance, then turned back to her men. That's not the best part. She hurried over to a pallet, grabbed a case, and flipped it open. Liberators. Tunal leaned in. Completely polymer firearms, Sheila said proudly. No metal, unconventional propellant, advanced polymer armor-piercing slugs, virtually undetectable. Made by Terran intelligence, hard to get, but for you guys, I made it happen. Tunal whistled in admiration. Oh, almost forgot. Sheila suddenly dashed into the ship and came out with a gun case. Got you a present. She popped the latches and lifted the lid. This, she said, eyes gleaming, is a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. Tunal tilted his head. Not even chemical, totally mechanical operation, and this puppy barks. She grinned wickedly. Let me show you how to work it. After a brief demonstration, Tunal was delighted. This is simply, a loud beeping cut him off. What the hell is that? Scal bolted into the ship. A moment later, he sprinted back out, panic in his eyes, and something much worse trailing down his pant leg. It's a Federation cruiser, he shrieked. Tunal glanced down at Scal's leg. Seriously? Scal didn't even register the comment. What are we gonna do? He wailed. Sheila paced furiously, muttering under her breath. Then, she stopped cold. This is what we're gonna do. She whirled toward her crew. Get those Zeos onto my ship now. I promised I'd get them out, and they are getting out. Get the nukes and as many weapons as you can onto your ship. Tunal hesitated. Why? Just do it, Sheila snapped. Tunal didn't argue. He rushed to the nearest nuke and started hauling it toward his vessel. A voice crackled over the comms. Major Landers, you got maybe 5 minutes. You hear that, Zings? 5 minutes. Move. Sheila bellowed as she threw open a crate and grabbed an AK. Tunal calmly picked up one as well. What about the cargo? The cargo is the cargo, a voice called from Paper Tiger. Prepare to launch. You got it, Major, the man confirmed. But we're not going to get them all on board and launch in time. I'll buy you time, Sheila shouted, chambering around. I'm counting on you, Sergeant. A man ran from the ship, ushering the Z refugees on board. Welcome to Pirate Cruise Lines. We hope you enjoy your trip, he said with a grin. Herding them inside. Sheila turned. What the hell are you doing, Lieutenant? The former officer smirked. Backing your dumb ass up, ma'am. He shoved the last Z family into the ship, grabbed a rifle, and took position. Sheila turned to Tunal. How long does Scal need? If he stops shitting himself? Maybe 3 minutes. 2 Federation landing craft came into view. They're early, Sheila exhaled sharply. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Oh, and tea? She flashed a grin. I did bring chocolate. Should have delivered it first. Tunal clicked in amusement as he ducked behind a pallet of crystal meth. No worries, best to face this sort of thing on an empty stomach anyhow. Sheila turned to her crew. All right, boys. She racked the AK. It's party time. Gunfire erupted. Aboard the Federation cruiser. Captain, we are taking heavy fire. 3 combatants, 2 human, 1 Z, the strike leader reported. The captain's voice was icy. There are 3 of them. What's the issue? They have us pinned down. Bang. We're taking casualties. The captain's patience thinned. Request permission to use lethal force. Negative. We need them alive. We need to know the source of the nuclear weapons. A new voice crackled over the comms. Captain, this is Strike Sergeant. The strike leader has been severely injured. I am assuming command. They have grenades. The captain's jaw clenched. Assuming? Boom. Assuming command, sir. The ships have launched, heading in opposite directions. They have rockets, someone screamed. Get away from. Sir, we just lost a landing craft, the captain inhaled sharply. Very well. Withdraw to defensive positions and await reinforcements. Yes, sir. Boom. Sir, we just lost the other lander. The captain cursed under his breath and slammed his fist onto the console. A comm officer turned. Orders, sir? His voice was venomous. Send every damned Marine we have to the surface, now. Sir, the vessel with the nukes is preparing to jump. Fire an EMP. We'll board once we've dealt with the surface. Trying, sir. His evasive maneuvers are. The officer's eyes widened. Wait, I got him. A long silence. The other vessel has jumped to hyperspace. The captain exhaled through clenched teeth. Exactly as they planned, he growled. Sheila awoke with a splitting headache. She groaned and rolled over, only to find herself in a cell with her compatriots. Ow, she winced. Is it just me, or have they dialed up the stunners? Tunal flopped over beside her, clicking in pain. It wasn't the setting, he rasped. It was the number of times we were shot. He turned his head toward her. I know for a fact. You caught a lot. After a long silence, Sheila groaned. Ow, I think they dialed up the stunners. Tunal let out a weak click. Wasn't the setting, just the number of times we got shot. The lieutenant groaned faintly. I think I cracked my carapace. Sheila weakly kicked at him. Dumbass, glorious dumbass. She grinned, wincing at the pain. I wonder why the feds could possibly be mad at us. Indeed, Tunal muttered. They have no sense of humor. Meanwhile, on Federation Security Station 12, Ambassador John Wintersmith was enjoying his lunch when the news came in. The Federation, against all odds, had actually done something competent. They'd caught her. Not just her, but 2 Zeos, caught red-handed paying for guns and nukes with crystal meth of all things. John had no idea how the feds pulled it off, but he didn't care. All that mattered was that they had. And now, all he had to do was collect her. The Terran Republic had many questions for Sheila Landers, and this time, there was no wiggling out of it. John wasted no time boarding his diplomatic vessel, heading straight for the security station where his prize awaited. He arrived to find Sheila, an unknown human male, and 2 Zeos, all looking scorched and groggy. He turned to the guard, a burly Tekth. What the hell happened to them? The Tuth shrugged. Nothing, just shot with stunners, repeatedly. John arched a brow. Including 2 incidents while in custody, the guard added. The female is a biter, so is one of the Z. John smirked. Good. He turned, his mood improving. Zap them a few more times for me, would you? The guard stiffened uncomfortably. John's smile faded. What? The Tuth hesitated. It's not my place to say, Ambassador. Well, it is mine, came an unfortunately familiar voice behind him. John's good mood evaporated. He turned around, his expression darkening. Standing there, his pecker crest fully inflated, was Counselor Keshala. Behind him stood 2 humans in Federation uniforms. John snarled, stepping forward. There was nothing in the universe more hated by a Terran human than a Federation human. Those collaborating bastards had played no small role in the trumped-up charges the Federation used to justify their attack. Worse, they had been exceedingly helpful in making that attack a success. John had murder in his eyes. Keshala's crest deflated slightly. If the ambassador behaves in any way that could be considered violent, Kshala said to the already uncomfortable Teth, you have my authority to use any force necessary to resolve the situation. That slumped. Just 2 more hours. 2 more hours and his shift would be over. He did not need this. He had dealt with Terrans before, during the war. He did not want to do it again. And now he had the perfect storm. A pissed-off Terran ambassador and 2 Federation intelligence officers. The T glanced at John's uniform. He didn't know Terran heraldry well, but he was pretty sure they didn't hand out decorations featuring skeletal remains for organizing the office charity drive. Counselor, John growled. What the hell are you doing here? I am here to facilitate the transfer of these prisoners, Kshala said smugly. John's eyes narrowed. All of them. The counselor smirked. John glared at the Federation agents, noticing the intelligence designations on their uniforms. His stomach sank. What the fuck are you playing at, Kshala? I am not in the mood for your theatrics, Ambassador, Kshala sneered. Nor I yours. John clenched his fists. Like hell I'm letting you take them. They may be scum, but they're Terran scum. I'm hauling their asses back to Terran space for questioning. Oh, you mean these enemy combatants? John blinked. What? Oh, didn't you hear? Kshala said, his tone obnoxiously condescending. They bore arms alongside dangerous Z insurgents in direct armed conflict with Federation forces. That makes them enemy combatants. That's total bullshit, and you know it. Kshala ignored him. In accordance with Federation Statute C. Statute 7 up your ass, John snapped. This is not over. Yes, Ambassador, Kshala said smugly. It is. The Federation agent stepped forward. These enemy combatants are valuable intelligence assets, Kshala continued. They will be interrogated rigorously, and, at our discretion, we may share pertinent information with your government. John clenched his jaw so hard it ached. Counselor, one of the Federation agents interrupted. Kshala turned. We took a heavy fighter here for speed, the agent explained. But it isn't large enough for the prisoners. We'd like to requisition a larger vessel for transport. And guards to secure them. Of course, Kshala purred. Just report to the transport office. Actually, the agent said smoothly, since we're taking them to a black site, it would be best if you signed for it directly. For security reasons, we don't wish to file an official flight plan. Kshala beamed. Absolutely. Just hand me the... He paused. Why such a large vessel? Unfortunately, after reviewing available ships, it was the only one large enough to meet our needs. The agent sighed. Admittedly, it's much too large, and we apologize for the inefficiency. But under the circumstances, we thought it best not to delay. Kshala waved it off. Perfectly reasonable. The agent glanced at John. I believe it's best to transfer the prisoners immediately. That makes sense, Kshala agreed, signing the tablet. Then he turned to John with a triumphant smirk. John stared back, murder in his eyes. Utterly unaware how close he had just come to dying, Kshala proudly strutted away, crest fully erect, as Sheila and her crew were led off. John stood there motionless for a long time. The Tiath beside him shifted nervously. Ambassador? John said nothing. He just smiled. The next day, John sat in his office, fuming. His calls went unanswered. Or worse, he got the same bullshit responses. Then, his superiors told him to drop it. They didn't want a diplomatic incident. Everyone was satisfied. Everyone except John. Just as he reached for the phone, his intercom buzzed. Ambassador? His assistant, Toby, sounded hesitant. Counselor Kshala is here to see you. John's smile returned. Show him in, he snarled.